In this exercise, we will build on what we've done in the previous exercise, and we will write a more useful function in order to process text. Now this function is called classify, and the idea of classify, it will take a piece of text and classifies important piece of information such as numbers. So for instance, if I have a piece of text that contains numbers, I want to blank out these numbers. You're probably using such a function in your email client if you inadvertently put, as for instance, a number that looks like a social security number or try to hit send. It will tell you, well, do you really want to send that email? So in the background, they're doing these kind of classification in order to help users not release sensitive informations out. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to write a function classify. Now, I'm going to need the function's mask and the function isNumber from last time. So I'm going simply to copy and paste these functions so that I don't type them again. Again, the function mask will mask any piece of text using a masking character. And we also wrote the function isNumber, which basically tell us whether a certain input is a number, defined as all digits or a dash. Now the next step is to write the function classify. The function classify will take a string and then we'll need to blank out sensitive information. Okay, so what do we do now? What is the sequence of steps that takes us from a certain input, which is this message, to the output? Well, the first thing we need to do, we need to figure out the unit of analysis here. What are we classifying? And we're really classifying individual words in this string. So probably the first step is to break the string into words. So we can do that using the function split. We split it and we get a list. Well, let's run this first. And we get a list of words here. Okay, so the list of words, as you can see here, is a bunch of words, and we're probably interested in blanking out not all of them but some of them. So what we need to do here, we need to go over each one of the words in this list of words and detect if it's sensitive, meaning if it's a number. If it's a number, we need to replace it in the original string to be blanked out. So we've actually done something similar when we detected a word being an email address. We wrote a loop that goes over each one of these words, and if this word contains an @ symbol, we detect it as an email address. It's a very similar process in here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start with a function, let's call it function classify, and this function will take a message as a parameter. Once again, we're using loops. We haven't formally introduced loops yet, so take this as a sneak peek to what we're going to talk about in the next lecture. But the idea here is that once we have a list such as this one, what we can do with this list is to visit each individual items, each word in words. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to write such a loop that go over each word in words. Now, within this loop, within the body of the loop, I have the opportunity of processing each word. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to test whether the word is a number. I'm going to write a condition here. If isNumber word, it means I managed to find a sensitive word, because some of the words are not sensitive, so I don't want to do anything with them. But the moment I find a sensitive word, such as this one, which is a number, I want to do something. What do I need to do? I need to blank it, right? So I'm going to create a variable called blank, which is the result of masking word here. Now, what do I do with the variable blank? Well, I need to put blank back in my text. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace in message the word word with the word blank. But obviously I want to change that message. Don't forget that this replace function doesn't have a side effect. So I'm going to assign it back to message in order to ensure that the original string has changed. So this if statement will run over each word because it's in a loop, so it will run over each one of the words. Only when we detect a word which is a number, we're going to replace it with a mask. Now, I'm done with the if here, so I'm going one level back. I'm done with the for, so I'm going one level back. I am at the end of my function. At the end of my function, I want to return the message. So let's test our function. I'm going actually to call it on the same variable message, and we can see here that the client number has been blanked and the social number has been blanked. Now you may see this weird \n. You now know what this is. This is basically the line feed because we have an enter character. If you want to print this on multiple lines, we can use the function print to print the message back again. And you can see that once we print the message, those two numbers have been blanked out. Okay, so once again, this function will take the string, it will split it to a list of words, it will go over each word in these words, it will examine whether the word is as a number using the function isNumber. So this function is calling another function, and then if it's a number, it's going to call the other function mask to create the masked version of the word, and then it will call yet another function replace. That's a built-in function in Python, not a function we wrote, and to replace this word with its blanked version. This is an example of composition again, because this function classify relies on the function split, the function isNumber, the function mask, and the function replace. But obviously the sequence of operation was up for us to figure out. That's being able to implement the function, write down the algorithm, the sequence of steps that takes us from the input to the output. So now we are being asked to improve on the function isClassify. The idea here is that there may be more sensitive information than numbers. For example, maybe we want to blank emails from our text. So in order to do that, we would like to write another function called isEmail. This function should be very similar to isNumber, but instead of detecting whether the word is number, it will detect whether it's an email. Now, once we do that, we can rewrite our function classify. But the idea here is that we want to make the function classify general enough so that it can classify numbers and also classify emails at the same time. So to do this, we're going to make our function classify takes an optional parameter, which is the function used to detect sensitive information. For instance, if we want to classify number, we call the function classify and we pass in the function isNumber as a parameter. And if we want to classify emails, we call the function classify and we pass in the function isEmail as a parameter. Okay, so the function isEmail is giving to us. It's a very simple function. Basically, a text is an email if there is an @ in the text. But presumably, maybe we have social media handlers, so we don't want the @ to be in the beginning. If the @ in the beginning, it's not an email. It's probably, a username or social media handler, something like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically modify the function classify. So I'm going to copy this function classify here. Once again, once I run the cell, it's going to override the function classify. It's basically a very simple change. It's not like a long change. The only difference in here is that we want to make this function relies on another function, which is not a problem in Python because we know in Python that functions are first-class citizens. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to pass another parameter to the function called isSensitive. However, isSensitive should be a function that returns true or false depending on whether the word is sensitive or not. Now what I'm going to do here, instead of using isNumber, I'm going to use the function isSensitive. Now, you may ask the question now, so where is the function isSensitive? We did not define such a function. And yes, we did not. This function doesn't exist. This is the parameter referring to the function isSensitive. In reality, this will be either isEmail or isNumber in our context, but we are referring to it as isSensitive here. Meaning if I want to call my function classify now, I am obliged to provide another function as a parameter. Where is sensitive, right? So I am now obliged to say, okay, I want to classify my message using isNumber. Now, if I provide isNumber here, isNumber is a function, so isSensitive will be the same function as isNumber, and I'm going to classify based on numbers. So I only blanked out numbers here. Similarly, if I do the same with isEmail, isEmail will refer to isSensitive here. Well, isSensitive will be the same function as isEmail, and I'm going to blank out the email here. And once again, this is possible because this function is like any other variable. The only difference is that the function is a variable that has a call capability by using the parentheses here. So now the function classify is more general. It operates on any piece of sensitive information as long as we have a function that detects this piece of information to be sensitive. Now lastly, if we want to classify a message now, we need to provide a function to detect this sensitive information. This may be a bit restrictive because maybe 90% of the time we want to classify numbers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this parameter optional, and I'm going to make the default value of this parameter to be isNumber. Meaning if the user doesn't provide any function, it's going to be the function isNumber. If the user provides a function, then it's going to be the function that the user provides. So in this case, we are providing the text and the function, which is isNumber, so we get numbers classified. In this case, we get emails classified. In this case, we don't have a function passed to the function classify, so it's going to be isNumber by default. So this is one of the use case scenarios of using a function as a parameter of another function, just to make this function more capable and fine-tune its behavior without needing to repeat the code once again. The last question is asking us to classify both numbers and emails. So actually we can chain these calls together. So we can do classify the numbers first, and we get a text, and then we classify because that's a text. I'm going to call it back to classify, and then that's the result of classifying numbers, and then pass in isEmail here, and that will be classifying the classified. But the first classification was classifying the numbers, the second one is classifying the emails.